Over the course of hundreds of cruises that we've collectively taken, our staff has seen some crazy things in our time, and today we're sharing the craziest things we've seen on a Royal Caribbean cruise. Up next. Hey everyone, it's Matt from RoyalCaribbeanBlog.com. Unexpected things can happen on a cruise, and although you can dream about a perfect vacation, you shouldn't always expect the cruise to go as smoothly as you might hope. Realistically, you might experience a few unpredictable mishaps during your cruise. And here at Royal Caribbean Blog, our staff has collectively cruised over 200 times. Needless to say, we have experienced a few crazy things ourselves during our cruises, from being kicked out of the Diamond Lounge for wearing shorts to watching pier runners sprint all the way to the ship before all aboard time. I'm not sure we've seen it all, but we've seen a lot. So today I wanted to share some of the craziest stories from our own Royal Caribbean Blog staff members. Let's start off with Allie's story, and that was on Mariner of the Seas, in which another ship struck their cruise ship. Last spring, Allie took a quick cruise on Mariner of the Seas, and on embarkation day, guests were informed that the ship would have to go to dock in Freeport for some routine maintenance, which would replace the sea day. Now, that alone would be kind of a crazy story, but after the ship got to Freeport, this is when something happened, because as the ship was sitting there in the dock, Allie felt a big jolt, and the ship swayed. And they kind of joked with Allie and her sister that we must have hit an iceberg. But the captain then came on the speaker to immediately announce that a cargo ship that was docked next to Mariner had, quote, bounced into the ship. So Allie ran to the back of the ship to see the cargo ship's bridge nearly crumpled, and crew members were blocking off the area where Mariner sustained some minor damage. Now, the captain assured that everybody on board that Mariner was still seaworthy, and this would not impact their sailing. Essentially, what happened was it was so windy that the cargo ship tried to dock, and the wind pushed that cargo ship into Mariner of the Seas. Their bridge bounced off Mariner's aft on deck 5, creating a pretty noticeable hole in the side of the ship. Luckily, it wasn't really a big deal and was more of an aesthetic change, but I don't think anybody wants to see another ship smashed into their ship. Number 2, we're calling this one a new stateroom for the night. When I heard this story from Marcy, I had to laugh at it because I thought it was a really interesting story. So, Marcy was sailing on board the now retired Monarch of the Seas, and Marcy and her husband were desperate to get some sleep, so they tried to find somewhere to go in the middle of the night instead of their extremely noisy cabin. For Marcy, they were in a junior suite, but back then, the 3-night cruises didn't depart in Nassau until midnight, and because of this, the ship would have a sail-away party on the pool deck, but it would last till like 3 or 4 a.m. So the junior suites were directly below the pool deck on Monarch of the Seas, and they could hear everything like they were in the room with them. The DJ on the microphone, the music, people singing and laughing, deck chairs scraping along the ceiling. They could hear everything. So what Marcy did is they went down to guest services and asked if she and her husband could be moved to a lower category room, but of course the ship was full. So Marcy felt like a zombie walking around the ship with their pillows looking for somewhere to get some sleep. Luckily, she stumbled upon an unlocked conference room on deck 2, and they went to bed in the conference room because it was quiet in there. Going forward, Marcy always employs one of our best tips, which is when picking a cabin, looking what is one deck above or below to avoid public areas. Next up is Oscar, Oscar, Oscar. And if you know this maritime code, you know where the story is going. Haley was on board Symphony of the Seas and heard the scary announcement of Code Oscar. So shortly after noon, she heard the Oscar, Oscar, Oscar call over the PA system. The Oscar code is for man overboard, and it's the absolute last one you want to hear. They had just been seated for sushi at Izumi, and everybody was really worried because, of course, that means someone is in the water. And the staff did a wonderful job of keeping the lunch going, even though they were just as worried as the guests. But she certainly could feel the ship slow down and stop, and about 10 minutes later, turn back around. The captain announced about midway through lunch that there was an overboard situation and the Coast Guard was involved. The running track on Deck 5 was closed to guests so that the rescue operations could be activated from that portion of the ship. The captain then made another announcement at 1 p.m., this time telling us that the guests had claimed a person was in the water, and to account for everybody on the ship, all guests had to go to their dining room to scan their SeaPass cards. Crew members were to do the same. It was a fairly easy process, like getting off the ship for an excursion. Then everybody was directed through the dining room to an emergency door and out to the running track, up a set of stairs, and onto the boardwalk. The captain then informed everybody at 3 o'clock that all guests and crew were accounted for, and they just had to wait about 30 minutes more to be cleared by the Coast Guard as they sent a helicopter to scan the area. At 3:40 p.m., everything was cleared. So as it turned out, there wasn't anybody overboard, and luckily, there wasn't a big issue there, but still something you don't encounter all the time. Next up is a surprise guest in the cabin. So when Nicole was boarding Liberty of the Seas, they found someone else in their cabin. Yeah, so as Nicole was scanning their SeaPass card to go up the ramp to the ship, they were asked by the crew members who Lisa was. Nicole explained that we don't know Lisa, and they were that only her and her husband were booked on the cruise. The person scanning had to move to the side to get a supervisor and check out what the issue was. In the Royal Caribbean system, it was showing that there were 3 people assigned to the same cabin. And they told Nicole that they would look into the issue and they were fine to board, so they got on board the ship. So Nicole and her husband headed to guest services to see if they knew anything what the issue was related to, and it turned out that Lisa was from a previous sailing that hadn't closed out her onboard account. That was why she was still showing as assigned to Nicole's room. So they kept an eye on the cat. Luckily, didn't have any other charges associated with that. Our next crazy story actually happened to me on Adventure of the Seas when cruises resumed in 2021. During the mandatory muster drill, you never really expect to hear the ship's alarm during your cruise vacation. But when I was on Adventure of the Seas, I was enjoying some time late night at the pub when the ship's alarm was sounded. Once the alarm went off, crew members instructed everybody to go to their muster stations. It was like 11:20 p.m., and my kids were in Adventure Ocean. Being on the promenade, I was pretty close to our muster station to begin with, so I was among the first to get out to the station. In fact, we beat a lot of crew members out there. Now, at this time, the alarm was just repeating, and a few minutes later, the alarm stopped, and the captain came on to the intercom to let us know it was a false alarm. The crew later told us that something was up because when the alarm goes off in drills, they expect to hear an announcement after the first time the alarm is sounded. As you might imagine, I was very relieved not to have to go into a lifeboat, although jokingly afterwards we thought about it. This was in 2021, in which much of the Royal Caribbean fleet was laid up and just kind of floating around the Caribbean. So we joked that if we were going to be rescued by another Royal Caribbean cruise ship, that I'd be more picky about it. Like if Rhapsody of the Seas came by, I'd be like, no, I'm going to hold out for like an Oasis or at least a Freedom class ship that's going to rescue me there. Again, jokes you can make after you know that it's not an emergency. So there you have it, some of the craziest things we've seen on a Royal Caribbean cruise, and no doubt there's plenty more stories to go around. I'd love to hear what is the craziest thing that you've experienced, not heard, but experienced on a Royal Caribbean cruise ship. Let me know in the comments below. I'm sure it's going to be very, very entertaining. Please keep it PG for everybody involved. While you're down there below our video sharing your PG story, be sure to like our video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications. Subscribing is free to do, and the notifications allow you to be alerted when there's a brand new video. That's it, no upsells. This has been Matt from RoyalCaribbeanBlog.com, and we'll talk again real soon.